In a hellhole ruled by predators, this fragile newcomer just became fresh meat. But the bullies made a fatal mistake. They didn't realize this fish was under the protection of the yard's systematic king. The story kicks off in a gritty Philadelphia lockup. A young guy named Ron is chained up with a group of hardened criminals. Ron got busted for possession and smoking weed, and the judge hammers him with 6 to 8 months behind bars. The second he steps into the prison, Ron realizes every group has its own separate gang. He eventually connects with Earl through a white gang leader. Earl is highly educated, but don't let that fool you. He's serving 18 years for a serious crime. Ron approaches Earl for legal advice on his case. Earl tells him he's currently slammed and will help him out later. See, Earl runs with a crew of old-timers just like himself. They spend their days doing time and moving contraband. Ron catches Earl's group scoring from another inmate, but the second the guards look their way, they instantly snap back to acting normal. Having spent decades in this hellhole, Earl knows every guard on the block. He's even tight with the captain. In his downtime, Earl hangs out in the captain's office, typing up reports and official notices on a typewriter. Back in the cell, Ron gets paired with a unique cellmate. The guy gives him a fair warning. This place is crawling with dangerous predators. He tells Ron they hunt for young, fresh meat like him, so he better not act friendly with anyone. That evening, a few selected inmates head to the common area for a singing show. Earl is there, watching the performance with his buddy Vito while riding a high. Vito spots a Mexican inmate named Psycho Mike cornering Ron. Vito warns Earl that the new kid is about to be harmed. Psycho Mike and his crew of predators have been tracking Ron like prey. Even Ron's cellmate tells him Mike is definitely planning a move, advising him to score a sharp tool for protection. The next day, Ron hits the gym and asks Earl for a weapon. He explains that Mike is harassing him. Earl tells him he's only got a few months left, and a fight will just stack more time on his sentence. Instead, Earl takes matters into his own hands and meets Psycho Mike with his crew. He tells Mike that the new boy is under his protection. Mike immediately backs off. Earl knows every power player in this jail, and Mike wants no smoke with Earl's gang over some new kid. From that day on, the Mexican inmates leave Ron alone. Because of Earl's influence, the gang starts treating Ron like one of their own. They head to the first floor to drink some homemade prison brew. Suddenly, the guards get tipped off and head straight for them. Ron spots them coming and warns Earl's crew, but they can't hide the evidence in time. The guards bust Ron along with the rest of them, throwing everyone into solitary. Because Ron gave the heads up, Earl looks out for him. He sneaks Ron's cigarettes hidden inside a magazine through a janitor. He also sends a note telling him to plead not guilty when the warden asks questions. A week later, Ron and the crew are hauled into the warden's office. Following Earl's lead, Ron stays cool and pleads not guilty. He tells the officers he was just a bystander and didn't harass anyone. The rest of the crew gets another year tacked on, but Ron walks away without extra time. Back in the captain's office, Earl makes sure to type up a glowing report on Ron's behavior. He wants to ensure Ron makes a killer impression on the judge at his next hearing. Ron heads back to general population and finds Earl to thank him. In the common area, Ron realizes how dangerous this place really is. He watches inmates settle beefs right on the floor. He even witnesses a fatal strike just feet away from him. Earl constantly reminds him to stay close to the group. Ron is still green, and Earl knows predators will pounce if they catch him alone. Earl pulls a string and sends him to the prison doctor. At Earl's request, the doctor fakes a medical report claiming Ron has a fractured shoulder, landing him in the prison hospital. It's the safest spot in the building. One day, the captain visits Earl's new protege. He mentions that at Earl's request, he's considering moving Ron into Earl's block. But he warns the kid to stay clean and stay out of trouble. After 2 weeks of recovery, Ron heads back to his cell. He joins Earl in the yard and thanks him again for the backup. Suddenly, tension explodes when the black inmates refuse to work and launch a massive strike. They block off a section of the prison, and during the chaos, they end a Mexican inmate passing through. This ignites a full-blown race war between the Mexicans, the whites, and the black inmates. The guards open fire to break it up, forcing everyone to hit the dirt. After the smoke clears, the guards count heads and force a total lockdown. Several inmates are dead from the brawl and the gunfire. For 25 hours, everyone is trapped in their cells. Eventually, the captain asks veterans like Earl to reopen the kitchen so they can feed the guards and the prisoners. Earl calls a guard and gets Ron brought down to the kitchen too. While the captain and guards eat, Earl shares a fresh meal with Ron. He explains that after a riot, the kitchen always opens first. Because the prison is overpopulated and understaffed, things move slow. Ron asks Earl why he's doing all this for him. Earl admits that when he first arrived years ago, he had nobody, and he doesn't want Ron to suffer that same fate. Ron asks the captain for a transfer, and soon, he's moved into a bigger cell with Earl's crew. Finally, Ron feels safe, spending every waking moment with the gang. Earl tells him he's studied the entire case. He advises Ron to take a job or a course to build up good behavior points. Under a new legal rule, minor drug charges can be reduced for good conduct after 90 days. Earl believes the judge might even scrap the rest of the sentence since Ron has already served 3 months. Taking the advice, Ron starts working in the barbershop and signs up for high school courses. In class, a man starts staring Ron down, but Ron ignores him and focuses on the books. One day, that man corners Ron alone in the bathroom and attempts an assault. Luckily, a teacher walks in to use the facilities, forcing the attacker to flee. Ron is disgusted and feels completely powerless because the guy is much stronger than him. Without telling Earl, Ron scores a tool from an old janitor to handle business himself. But the janitor tips off Earl about the item. Earl intercepts him before things get bloody. He tells Ron his anger is valid, but an incident will guarantee a new felony charge. He tells Ron to leave the hit to the gang, but Ron is done being dependent. He grabs a massive tool and storms into the man's block. The guy isn't intimidated at all. Suddenly, Earl appears in the cell and starts brawling with the man. While they're locked in combat, Ron moves in and strikes the guy in the ribs from behind. The attacker collapses. Earl's crew, including Vito, rushes in to hustle Ron and Earl away. Earl sends Ron back to his cell and sprints to the captain's office to create an alibi. But it's too late. The guards arrest him anyway. The man survived the strike and snitched, naming both Earl and Ron as the attackers. For the life-threatening assault, both are thrown into the hole, total solitary confinement in the dark for weeks. Earl manages to send a message to the yard through the toilet drain. Soon after, his crew finishes the job, ending the snitch in the prison hospital so he can't testify. With the witness gone, the warden and lawyers grill Earl. They demand he admit his and Ron's involvement, but Earl just hurls insults and refuses to talk. Fuming at his defiance, they plan to bury Earl under more time and transfer him to a different facility. They also flag Ron as a gang member in his official report, asking the judge for a massive sentence increase. Later, Ron is bused to the courthouse. Based on the jail's recommendation, the judge hits him with an extra 5 years for gang activity. Outraged, Ron berates the judge and his own lawyer as the police drag him away. Back at the holding cell, his father visits. Seeing his only son in this state breaks him. He promises to hire the most expensive lawyer money can buy. Meanwhile, the captain visits Earl in solitary with some cigarettes. He warns Earl that the new warden is shipping him out because his influence is too strong. They also suspect him in the hospital hit. For the first time in years, Earl is actually stressed. He can't leave this jail. He immediately cooks up a desperate plan and starts a hunger strike. Earl uses a tool to cut himself, smearing blood everywhere. He takes the food the guards left and scatters it around like waste. The guards are convinced the hole has turned Earl insane. They immediately transfer him to the mental ward. Once he's out, he reunites with Ron and learns the kid is stuck there for years. That's when Earl decides they're breaking out. Ron reaches out to his father to arrange a safe house in Costa Rica. Earl starts tracking every vehicle entering the gates, looking for a hole in the security. One day, while they're discussing the plan in the showers, a crazed inmate starts screaming and singing. When Earl tries to quiet him down, the psycho lunges at them with a sharpened item. The other inmates pull him off, but Earl's chest and Ron's face are sliced up. They're both sent back to the hospital. Because a black inmate attacked Earl, the white prisoners prepare for a massive retaliation. However, the leader of the black gang visits Earl in his hospital bed. He explains the attacker was mentally ill and that his crew respects Earl too much for a war. He promises they'll handle the guy themselves and asks Earl to keep the peace. Earl agrees. He doesn't want a race war ruining his escape. A high-ranking member of the black gang eventually ends the madman and tosses his body into a garbage truck. When Earl hears the body was crushed and hauled out, he gets his aha moment. He tells Ron that the garbage trucks come every day and the guards never check inside the bins because the trash gets crushed. It's high risk, nobody has ever tried it because of the fear of being flattened. Earl reaches out to the prison veterans for help. Vito and the crew bribe the truck driver and arrange for heavy iron bars. The plan is to use the bars to create a gap in the crusher so they don't get turned into pancakes. On the night of the escape, Earl joins his crew one last time and says his goodbyes. The next morning, after the roll call, Earl and Ron slip out of line and hide in the kitchen. Inmates on kitchen duty help them hide as they grab the bars and move toward the truck. Ron successfully leaps into the garbage. But just as Earl is about to jump, a guard steps into the doorway. Earl is trapped. The truck starts moving and the crusher activates. Inside, Ron jams the iron bar into the mechanism, saving himself from the crush. The truck passes through the routine checkpoint. The guards only check the undercarriage, never the trash itself. Back in the common area, Earl watches the truck roll through the main gate and vanish. Earl isn't sad. He's actually smiling. His plan worked, and at the very least, Ron is finally free. Earl finds Vito, who tries to cheer him up. Vito tells him he rules this place, and without him, the jail would be a total bore. In the final shot, Earl and Vito walk back toward their gang in the common area, acting like it's just another day in the factory. That's the brutal truth of the animal factory. Ron escaped the nightmare, but Earl remains the king of the cage. If you're hooked on these gritty stories, hit like and subscribe to Cinemaned right now. Don't miss our next breakdown. Stay safe, stay sharp, and keep watching.